How's it going? This is Keanu Yamamoto with the Coaches Podcast. In here with Coach Stacy Collins, assistant head coach, special teams coordinator, and linebackers coach for Boise State. Coach, thanks for jumping on. Please tell us about your family, journey, background, all that good stuff.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's always great to see your face and be back. I'm back in the Pacific Northwest myself right now, which is always great to be back home. But yeah, I'm Stacy Collins, special teams coordinator, inside linebacker coach at Boise State University, originally from Sutherlin, Oregon. Played my ball at Western Oregon University, went there to be a high school teacher and coach, ended up getting in the graduate assistant game and working from there. More importantly, I see myself as a husband, father, teacher, and coach. I'm the father of 4 daughters. How about that, man? My oldest, Kayla, she just got married this weekend back in Sutherlin, Oregon. So that was a huge celebration on this Saturday. I got my second daughter, Mackenzie, who's 21 years old. She goes to school out in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. She'll be done this fall. I got a 15-year-old Kylie that goes to Mountain View High School out in Boise, Idaho, Meridian, Idaho. She's playing some hoops out here and some tournaments out in Oregon. So I made a chance to watch her this afternoon. And then I got my 13-year-old McKenna. Me and my wife, Mandi, have been married for 24 years. So she's the rock of this place, keeps it going. But unbelievable family, unbelievable to be back in the Pacific Northwest. Like I said, I played at Sutherlin High School. Then I went to Western Oregon University, played there for 5 years, redshirt, and played for 4. And then at that time, got a chance during I initially started coaching GA there at Western. At that time, in the great state of Oregon, I did my student teaching at Sheldon High School under Dennis Ludwig, who the field's named there after there. I was fortunate to work for Lud. And Marty Johnson had just taken over at Sheldon High School, so people up in the Northwest know that crew and the success they had. But was also able, as a GA, got a chance to work over in Europe. Tom Smythe was the head coach of the Vienna Vikings, and I got an opportunity. Blaine Bennett was the head coach at Western Oregon. So I would coach and go through school up through signing day. I'm recruited to the Southern Oregon area. Then I'd jump on a plane to Vienna, Austria, go over there and coach. I did that for 3 seasons. So this will be my 28th year coaching. This will be my 31st season. But my time in Vienna was really cool, man. That was very, very transformative to me as a football coach and as a person. After I was done in Vienna, me and my wife got married. And I went out to South Dakota School of Mines and Technology in Rapid City, South Dakota, to coach the Fighting Hard Rockers out there. I was a defensive coordinator at that time. I went from there to Western Washington University, which is a crying shame, no longer has a football program. Bellingham's an unbelievable place. We had to work for Rob Smith, and we had an unbelievable group of players. I went from there to Idaho State University, got a chance to work with Larry Lewis at Idaho State. Found out real quick what coaching's like. We ended up getting the whole staff got fired. At the end of our tenure there, went to Southern Oregon for a year as the defensive coordinator, and then worked up at Central Washington for a 3-year stint at Central Washington. From there, I went to Portland State University on the Park Blocks, worked with Nigel Bergman at Portland State, and then got a chance to be a head coach. Went back to the School of Mines, South Dakota School of Mines, was the head football coach at South Dakota School of Mines for 4 years, transitioned from what was an NAI program to a D2 program. And from there, went to Utah State. So a chance to get to the Division I level at Utah State to Boise State, to Penn State, and then now back to Boise State. So I know that's a long track record, but hey, man, it's been a great ride, and been fortunate this game is what it's done for me and my family.
That's awesome, Coach. I had to look up the bio before this. I know you had a lot of spots, but when I looked up the bio before we got on, I was surprised at how many spots. That's freaking awesome, man. That's quite the journey. How was it when you're coaching out in Austria? I think you were the head coach. Am I not mistaken for a little bit?
No, I was the defensive coordinator. So Tom Smythe, who's an Oregon legend, and Tom passed away a little over a year ago, was the head coach. And so I got a chance to, but for me, it was I'm from Southern Oregon now, all right, 4,000 people, okay, the main streets out there. And so it went up the road to Western Oregon. So for me, it was a transformation process as a coach and as a person to go over to an unbelievable city like Vienna. The people that know Tom's one of the most unique individuals you'll ever be around. And I think what I learned the most was you can do things a lot of different ways. I'd grown up in the Western Oregon, the Randy Wagner, the Blaine Bennett, very, very disciplined structure. And that's a great thing. And I'm more that way thinking. What I learned from Tom, and not that Tom's not that way, but Tom was himself. Like, he was going to be outside the box. Like, we're going to practice for an hour. I don't know, maybe some hour and 15 minutes, but he was ahead of the curve on everything. Like, we were running tempo before tempo was cool. Those practices, everybody talked about Tom being a chill guy. Tom's chill off the field. That was an hour and 15, 20 minutes, and it was on. And so I learned, hey, man, when you're on there, the efficiency on the field, what he did from a practice standpoint, like when we did team, he would put the ball on the -1. And then his offense would work all the way down the field. So you would get all those field zones, go all the way down to the red zone to one. He'd flip around, come back. And then defensively, you do the same thing. And so just some simple things philosophy wise that when you look back on it, we're ahead of the curve. He was all over that. He truly understood how to keep things simple, allow players to play fast. So it was a great experience for me. And then certainly being in an international environment, being able to travel, to play, to get out of your comfort zone made me a better teacher because you got a language barrier. So you have to be very, very simple with what you're doing. And then I think the other thing I learned from Tom is making sure that you're matching your philosophies, both offensively, defensively, and special teams the best. So I was fortunate. I was at West Point at the time. We were 4-3 cover 4. It's what I knew. And he's like, hey, we're not going to do that. So if you want this job, you need to go down and learn the 3-3 from Rocky. Oh, he sent me down to New Mexico at the time. Rocky was the head coach. Rocco Mendenhall was the DC. And they sat me down for 3 days and taught me the 3-3 defense. But he said, hey, I'm going to be a up tempo. We're going to score 1 billion points. I want to make sure we got a defense that's high risk. We're pressuring. We're bringing it. I want to make sure we match philosophy. So it was a good lesson for me as a young coach to understand how important it is to mesh the philosophies of what you're doing in all 3 phases.
Love that, Coach. South Dakota School of Mines, first head coaching gig. What was something that caught you by surprise as a head coach?
You want to get humble, be a head coach real quick. I think I learned really, really fast. Like, as a young coach, I want to be a coordinator. I want to call plays. I want to be a head coach. I want to be this. And so you think you have a lot of answers. I thought I'd prep myself the best I could. I've been an assistant coach in many roles. And I do think as a special teams coordinator, that's great preparation for a head coach too, because you're dealing with the whole team. Like I'm around those guys all the time. You're in front of the team all the time. I ran camps, all those things you try to take on the roles. You have no idea till you walk into that chair. And I'm doing it at small, Division II level there. But just the amount of decisions that come across every day, how you respond every day is how your staff and how your players are going to respond. And then also it'll humble you where, hey, you think it's so much about all the decisions you've made. Hey man, you better get great players. You better have an unbelievable coaching staff and let them go to work. And so those things, I don't think I had a clue until about my 3rd year what was really going on.
That's a great answer, Coach. One of the things I remember vividly about you, whenever you had a recruiting presentation, like one of your big snippets was learn your learners, right? Can you I don't know if you're still doing that in your recruiting presentation. Can you kind of dive into that and what that was about?
Again, I was going to be a high school teacher and coach. And to me, if you can't coach, if you can't teach, great teachers are what makes great coaches. And so understanding your student athlete's learning style is everything. And I think it's probably one of the things that gets messed up. Most coaches that I've seen, and I saw it a lot when I was a head coach, are going to teach the way they learn. And people learn basically 3 different ways. Nobody's 100% for it. Your auditory, you can listen to what we're saying, you hear it, your kinesthetic sensory, walkthroughs, your movements, and then your visual learners. All right. And then, like I said, most coaches, if I'm a visual learner myself, most of my stuff that I see, guys are all doing visual learners. Well, if I got a linebacker room with 8 guys and all I do is teach visually, well, 4 of those guys might be visual and they're going to do great. The other 4 are frustrated. So you got to, in my opinion, you've got to teach to every learning style every day. And to this point, I try to take that even more and more than from we work together, Yams, of, well, I want to make sure our guys understand that what type of learner are they? Hey, coach, I went in there and watched 3 hours of tape. Yeah, bro. Well, 3 hours of tape for you is almost wasted because you're a kinesthetic sensory learner, man. You need to be walking through. You need to be working our interactive cuts. So you want to make sure you're bridging that gap and that you're reaching each one of them. No different if you're sitting in a classroom teaching. I want to make sure I'm reaching all 25, 30 students in that classroom. And so we have the mechanism we've used is identifying what type of learner are you. And I want to identify that throughout the recruiting process. So it's not a 6-8 month time that it gets to get these guys speed, man. I want them hitting the ground running. And then I got to make sure whether it's special teams, whether it's defense, whatever we're teaching, I'm teaching every learning style every day. And that is part of my meetings. So we record all of our meetings. That way my auditory guys, I got a freshman linebacker right now that joined us mid-year. I'll walk in there. He's got his earpads on. He's rewatching the meeting. We get up, we move, we stand, we do some different stuff, interactive cut-wise and movement-wise. You're seeing a lot of the NFL teams and the big college teams that have these nice rooms that are about 30, 50 yards wide that you can pop the screens up and get some kinesthetic movement. We do it in a meeting room. We're balling on a budget still a little bit. So we make sure we have those things, but you can get it done done the same. And then certainly the PowerPoints and those things. But to me, it's all about, learn your learner. How are you teaching? And if not, you're going to create frustration in your room, not just for yourself, but for your players.
28 years. Is that what you said as far as how
Yes,
long you've been
sir.
coaching?
Yeah.
28 years?
Yes, sir.
At what point in your career were you like, I think I'm starting to figure this out. This is who I am as a coach. This is my process. This is my philosophy. When did that click for you?
Yeah, probably when it really took me some time. I think when I became a head coach, because you really have to define who and what you want to, what you're about. I think a lot of times you can fall into, we all have mentors and guys that we've followed, we've been around, and a lot of times you gravitate towards how they teach, coach, all those things that fall into that. I think by the time I was a head coach, you got to realize, hey man, this is you're trying to put your stamp on it. So you got to have core beliefs. You got to have your philosophies. And so that, I think by the time I was done with my time at South Dakota Mines, I had a real clear picture on what I thought. Now, if you're not growing and developing and evolving in this profession, you're getting passed behind. And about the time you think you have it figured out, this game will humble you quicker than anything. So I do believe that's an ever-changing process. Players are changing. It's a lot different from when I first got into this, and that's normal. So how are you adapting? How are you developing yourself? How are you adapting to society, the players you're coaching, and the world of college football?
What's the why? What's the why behind coaching?
Yeah, for me, it's always been development of young man. This game changed me. It gave a small town dude from Southern Oregon that played small college football an opportunity to travel the world, to take care of my family, to coach the greatest game out there. So for me, it's all about giving back in the development. I can't thank, the amount of coaches that helped me develop, grow from as a player to where I'm at now. And even every day, I'm around a great group of men every day, it's awesome to go to work.
Coached a lot of ball in your life. What would you say, and I'm just off the top of my head, I'm assuming it's Penn State, but what would you say has been the funnest environment, funnest game that you've been a part of?
Yeah, I think playing in the Rose Bowl, we were able to, coach in the Rose Bowl and win the Rose Bowl, and that was cool. I mean, being a West Coast dude, being able to watch it growing up. I mean, you go out, you're coming down, you're on the charter bus down, on the escort, you're heading down through the hills into Pasadena, the flyby before. That was a pretty cool experience.
I had the opportunity to work with you for, I believe, 1 or 2 seasons at Boise State, and one thing I admire about you is you are fucking always on when you're in the building. Like when you got your special teams meeting, regardless if anything happened off the field, anything happens in the meeting room with the coaching staff, you were always on and you always delivered. High energy guy, great information, great communicator. At what point though is like, how do you turn it off? How do you turn it off? If that makes any sense? Because coach, you're freaking dynamic. Dynamic and electric would be the words I use to describe you.
I think I think balance is the hardest thing in this profession, right? Like this is an unbelievable profession, but man, the balance you got to have is not easy. And anybody who says it is, I think, lying to you. For me, the family's grounded me. When you have 4 daughters, they'll balance your ass real quick, right? Walk through them. They're awesome, but they're relentless, and they can care less about how that special teams meeting went, right? So I think part of that's been an ever-growing process, and I still got a lot of growth to do in that. But I think when you take a step back and realize, hey, this is my job when we walk in here, and it's an unbelievable job, and I'm not going to cheat this. I got to make sure I'm doing the same thing when I go home, and I got to check myself some stuff too, make sure there is balance there that I'm trying to do. I'm not, I'm always trying to be the best father, husband that I can be, because this game will pull you apart from that if you're not careful.
When it comes to your coaching philosophy, what's important to Coach Stacy Collins? What's important to your guys in the linebacker room?
Hard, love them harder. I mean, we're going to be in there, and I want to be, like I said, I want to be an elite teacher. I want to be the best teacher in America. I want my guys to walk out of there and say, okay, hey, we're dialed off of this, but we're going to coach our guys hard, man. I learned that from the coaches I was with. Like, how you do anything is how you do everything. So I want to make sure our guys are dialed away. But man, once we step off that field, I want them to know they can call me 3 a.m. They can call me 3 p.m. They can call me if I haven't coached them 28 years ago, and I think that relationship's everything. And that's the coolest thing about football is just the amount of different people you get a chance to meet, to be around from different walks of life. But to me, it's all about, hey man, we're going to coach these kids. We're going to make sure they're great husbands, fathers, develop them on and off the field. And that's an everyday deal. Like it all sounds good on Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock when you're playing in front of them. What are you going to be on February 5th? What are you going to be on July 5th? How is that consistency? That's the challenge in the everyday.
If there was some advice that you would give your younger self or younger aspiring coaches who want to get within the college game, what would that advice be?
I think a couple things come to mind from it. Be bold, be aggressive, be yourself. And what I mean by that is, like I said earlier, a lot of times, you have great mentors and you want to be like, I want to be like Yams. I want to be like Yams. Well, I'm not Yams. How do I find that role within myself? How do I be true to yourself and who you are. And I think the other thing is, don't get caught up in the outcome. I know this is cliche, but it is truly a process versus outcome. As you're working through that process, what are you doing every day to develop yourself as a coach? How do I have the best dang individual in everybody in there? How do I walk into that special teams room in front of 150 coaches and players and have the best 7-minute, 12-minute special teams meeting that we can have? Not, how am I going to be the next coordinator? How am I going to be the next head coach? How am I going to get the next paycheck? And I know that sounds easy. It's not easy to get through, but I think that's the challenge, is the process versus outcome. And all of us have been that way. As a young coach, I want to do this. I want to call plays. I want to do this. I want to be head guy. Yeah. You know what? Be the best you can be in that 22-minute, that 40 minutes, that 7 minutes of individual. And, and that's what I would tell myself again. Don't lose sight of that. And then you will find yourself within that. And when you find yourself, man, I tell my players all the time, what's your superpower? What makes you different than everybody else, man? What's your superpower as a coach? What makes Stacy Collins different than the next guy down the road? And you got to find that superpower and you got to buy into that.
I love that, Coach. Kind of piggybacking off of that, talking about being process oriented and not looking ahead. But if you don't mind lifting up the hood a little bit, what is the long-term goal for Coach Stacy Collins? Do you want to be a head guy again someday?
Right where I'm at, man. I work for the best head coach in America in Spencer Danielson. We're an unbelievable place. The history and tradition of Boise State is unbelievable. I'm a West Coast guy, so being back in the Pacific Northwest, so I'm in a great spot right now. What I want to be is the best dang assistant coach that I can be. Make sure our players are ready, make sure that we're doing everything we can to develop on and off the field. And again, that's probably one thing early on in my career, and I think a lot of coaches in this way, you're always looking for the next thing. I couldn't be happier with where I'm at right now, but we're also in a place, extremely high standards, extremely high expectations, as there should be. So we got to make sure, and I got to make sure we're delivering every day.
Can you kind of tell us a little bit about, who Coach Danielson is behind the scenes? Because obviously we get to see everything, news clippings, ESPN, social media. I got to be around him for 2 years. But why is it that Coach Danielson is such a revered leader?
He's who he is. Like, he's the same dude that we worked with on a Wednesday night trying to figure out a third down package at midnight. He's that same guy every day. And what I've been most impressed about with him is that he hasn't changed. I think that's hard. I think that's when you're in that role, when you get, all that, I guess, attention. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but Spencer Danielson is Spencer Danielson. He does not change. And that to me is the greatest compliment you can give somebody, is the consistency day to day. And it doesn't matter. I met Spence I remember when Spence was playing, you know what I mean? And I met him as a coach at Azusa. He is the same person. He stays strong to his values. And so what you see is what you get. That's not always the case in this game, unfortunately. But with Spence, there's no doubt.
In your opinion, what is the greatest challenge of coaching right now?
The distractions from the players and the parents, even, there's a lot going on. It's society one, right? You got a social media world that's, can pull young, especially young adults. I mean, I see it every day. I got 4 daughters, so I get a case study every day, which has been great for me, but I think just, it's the pull of, all the things that maybe don't matter. And that's easy for me to say, right? So you add NIL, you add transfer portal, you add social media. I think those are the biggest challenges, trying to stay process oriented when everybody else wants to talk about the outcome. And that all sounds easy. That's not an easy thing to do. And then you're navigating it with 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. You got other people with other interests in mind a lot of times that are pulling them a lot of directions. And a lot of those directions aren't what's best for the young man.
Yeah. If you had a magic wand, right, you could fix anything about the sport, on the field, off the field, or rule change, anything. What would that one change be?
I think consistency with what we're doing from a rule standpoint. I think the changes, there's been a lot of really, really good changes for the players, which I think were long needed. I just think everybody's looking for consistency. Can we get a consistent model that allows these student athletes to grow and develop the best they can? And like I said, there's been a lot of stuff. I mean, I remember when I was in GA, man, I put bagels out, but I couldn't give them cream cheese. Like, what are we talking about, man? As we're doing those things. So there's been a lot of stuff that has went in the right direction. I just think everybody's looking for consistency. And so that's the biggest challenge right now.
You kind of mentioned it earlier. You said, football is the greatest game. Kind of want you to geek out on this right now. In your opinion, why is football the greatest sport?
Yeah, it's the greatest team sport ever because everybody has to rely on everybody else to make it work. And the other part of it, I don't want to get too deep on it, but go to a football locker room. That you've heard it. I'm not the first one to say this, but you want to fix society, go hang out in a football locker room. Like you have dudes from every walk of life, from every spot, from every background, religious, ethnic, and get together. I mean, I love the Bill Curry, the huddle. I don't know if you've ever listened to that, but you get a chance. I'm getting old now, but it's a metaphor to what life is. And so, there's just so much that's corrected. And it's not all easy and it's not all smooth. It's how do get back up after you get knocked down? How do you pick yourself up? How do you find the ways that you solve problems? I mean, there's just so many things to football that mirror life. And that's the whole goal when we talk about development and developing players on and off the field is, yeah, the game's a big part of it. It's a huge part of it. But more importantly is how are these young men developed? I know myself, the only reason I've had success in life is because of this game and the coaches that poured into me, the players I played with, the guys. I mean, I've had a chance to travel the world. I've had a chance to coach and play with guys that I would never be around without this game. And to me, that's what makes it the greatest game.
Yeah. If I was an observer to come and watch practice, or if I had the opportunity to watch a special teams meeting again, because those are electric, what do you want me to take away from, who you are as a coach by how you go about your business, just from watching your practice or watching your meetings?
Yeah, I want to make sure we're going to be high intensity. We are going to have a great time, but we're going to do it with urgency. And again, I want to go back to the teaching point. I want to make sure, Keon Yamamoto walks out of there and he knows exactly what he's going to do. So when we step on that field, we know exactly where we're at. We're dialed with what we're doing, and we're doing it with unbelievable urgency and effort. So those are the things I want to make sure that we're getting across. And I want to say, well, hey, when you walk out of that special teams meeting, as we go to a walkthrough, then we go through that drill or that session. Hey, man, this thing is a leap progression. We know exactly what we're doing, and we're doing it with our hair on fire at a great effort level.
Yeah. If you could sit down with any coach, past, present, who would that coach be? What would be that one question that you'd need to ask them?
Really good question. That's a really good question. I think what's always intrigued me with Nick Saban is how he had consistency over such a long period of time, and then the transition of assistant coaches. Like that's hard. Like that to me is very, very impressive to have that much success. And I've been around Coach Saban a time or two. He wouldn't know who that guy is, but I think that's probably one of the most impressive things for me is to have that much consistency with change, because that's a hard thing to do.
If you could coach any player, past or present, who would it be and why?
That's a tough one, man. You're gonna get me in trouble on that one. So I've been fortunate. I've had a lot of really good players. A couple that come to mind, Adam Bighill, when I was at Central Washington, he was and he hadn't played in the CFL. I think he was a 3 or 4-time CFL Defensive Player of the Year. This dude was just unbelievable. One year, he blocks a punt for a touchdown, catches a fake punt for a touchdown, has a pick for a touchdown. I mean, this dude, he's 5'10" and a half. His mom passed away at an early age. Cleft lip. You want to talk about a chip on your shoulder, dude. It's just a freaking savage. Adam Bighill was that. And so to see the success he had, but if you've ever been around Adam, he's just as more impressive as a husband, as a father, also had an elite career. So Adam's one that comes to mind just because of all the things he had both on and off the field. When I was at Utah State, David Woodward was a linebacker for us that was just unbelievable in space, unbelievable athlete. Would only say about 3 words in the meeting room, but man, he was dialed. He was impressive to be around. We got a kid now that, and I don't know if you're involved in this recruiting process, but Bowen Phelps at Boise State, Bowen's a walk-on that, man, he had some hard struggles early on special teams, and he has gotten better and better, and he's a badass, man. I can't wait to watch him play more this year. So, and I was fortunate too that, the funny part with the specs I've been fortunate. I have great specs. I'm at Western Washington University, right? That again, crying shame no longer has football. Mike Cannon's kicking and punting for us. He spent 10, 12 years in the league. We recruit Matt Overton, who snaps there, and then he ends up playing 10. I was about, in my 20s thinking I had every answer on special teams. Well, the answer was we had elite specialists. So fortunate there. Dominic Everly was a great kicker for us. I kind of worked through a ton of those guys. At Penn State, I had a special teams guy, Don DeLuca, who was just the epitome. And it was a really cool deal at Penn State. If you were the best special teams player you voted on, you wore number 0. And so he was wear 0 out there, and he was kicking ass. And so just a lot of guys, man. I know I've left some behind, but I've just been fortunate to be around a lot of really, really good players.
Yeah. I don't think I wasn't involved in his recruiting process, but I was there when he came for summer camp, and he was on my Renegade team for Bowen.
Alex Tubin, another one. Like those guys
Yes.
that, you talk about the blue collar mentality, work your way through, like those are the guys, and again, man, I love my players. Like, it's hard for me. It's like asking my daughters which one's my favorite daughter, right? There's just a lot, but those guys that had that chip on their shoulder, those guys that fought through some adversity, and then you see them just have ultra success both on and off the field. I mean, there's always hold a special place in your heart.
That's good stuff, Coach. Is it what else is about them that makes them special? Because I know when I was with Coach Kane and we had Tubes there, and Tubes was sitting behind JL. He had just the uttermost belief in himself that he was going to be able to play ball at the next level. And at that point in time, it's like I didn't see it, but frick, man, it didn't matter who else saw it. He saw it, and that's all that mattered. Was there anything else that makes those guys special and stand out?
Wiring, right? Like those guys are all wired different. Like they have, first of all, there's a work ethic behind it that nobody sees. Relentless work ethic. And I'm talking about not just obviously in the weight room and the physical side, but I'm talking about the mental side too, right? The time they're spending, the question they're asking. Like, I always see it from a special team standpoint. I know who's in my office at 5:36 in the morning asking the questions. And then you know what? It's crazy. Those dudes are always the best players, and so I think that's the biggest challenge now too. You ask about, some of the stuff that's changed is you got to make sure in recruiting you are finding the right wiring. And that's easy to say. That's not easy to do.
I gave you a heads up before we got on. My daughter always has a question for the guest of the day, and her question was, "What's your favorite dessert?"
Like I'm a cheesecake guy. Love me some cheesecake. Now I'm back in Oregon now. I'm going to get some Umpqua ice cream, Douglas County. That's a shout out right there. So we're going to get that. But I'm a cheesecake guy. But my fat ass don't need to be eating too many more desserts. I'll tell you that much.
A little bit more, college football specific. What, if you don't mind breaking down, what does a day in a life look like during the season? Let's go Monday, Tuesday.
I think it's interesting when you're a special teams guy too, and you're coaching. And I'm not. I've done just special teams. I'm doing special teams and defense. So you've got to get ahead of the curve from a special team standpoint. So for me, the minute this thing's done, we're getting stuff graded. The minute the game's done, we're getting graded, and we keep it simple with the grades. But I want to get the feedback to the players. Obviously, going to get the feedback to Coach Danielson and the staff. And then the next day, like I'm a heavy knock as much special teams. If what we have not already got done from a breakdown, we're going to break down that way. We're going to work through. We're a Sunday off team. So that those Sundays for me between, special teams, I have to get ahead of the curve right there or else I'm going to be playing catch up. So I'm going to have about 90% of that done. And then once we roll in, now Mondays are real because you got to review the game on Monday morning with the coaches, the players, and then you're right into it. And we practice Monday evening. And so that Monday evening is important. And one of the things I picked up from Manny Diaz at Penn State and Coach Shenander's done an unbelievable job with their defense at Boise State, but is really spent some time Monday evenings on the critical situations, third downs, red zone, short yardage. And even though you're not getting it all in because it is a little bit early, but man, at least you got a bulk of those critical situations on tape. So what are your base calls? What are their top 2 or 3 things that you're seeing? And we take a 10-minute section of each of those. And I think that's very, very valuable. Like I said, Manny's the one who we did that at Penn State. It just made a lot of sense because a lot of times, and you're in there trying to make major decisions on a Wednesday night on a third down or short yardage. Those are the key ones, man. So I thought getting that on tape, you can make some adjustments, you can make changes. Your kids have seen it. You have your core calls, and we'll roll from there. So Monday's big for me. It's always about punt protection. You've got to make sure you understand how you're protecting punt. So our coverage units are going to take priority on Mondays. Now, if there's something unique we're going to see, I get an 8-minute period on Monday, so I want to make sure we're dialed on that. We're getting ahead of the curve any way we can. Tuesdays for us, from a special team standpoint, that is going to be our heavy kick day. So it is our coverage units. So we're going to work punt, we're going to work kickoff, we're going to make sure we get our field goals. That way, it also keeps my spec fresh. I think that's one of the things, especially I know I did as a young special teams coordinator. You got to take care of your specialists, man. Like they're Major League Baseball pitchers, and we're going to kick heavy on Tuesday, and then we're pretty light to very, very little through the rest of the week. And so that's a heavy breakdown on those days. That way too, if there is some issues with punt or kickoff coverage, I got a little bit more time later in the week. We can hit that back. Defensively, that's going to be our base downs, man. That's going to be the DNA of what we're seeing, the runs and passes we're seeing. And then Wednesday for us, from a special team standpoint, is our return phase. I like to break it up that way. That way my specs it's very light work on them to no work, depending on, how old my kicker is, my punter is, what that kick chart looks like. And then, defensively, we're really hitting the special situations a lot, like we talked about on a Monday. So now we're getting it twice on a Monday and a Wednesday. We've refined that package. What exactly are we trying to get? How are we trying to attack protections? What is the short yardage, game plan? Those things that really matter in those settings. Thursdays is a review day. I think the older I've gotten, the longer I've done this, those mental days are just as important, if not more important than the physical days. And it's all about creating confidence with our players. And it's about our players creating confidence for our coaches and other players there also. Like those Thursdays, we need to be dialed. And even though it's a walk through tempo, it's the recognition, it's the stance, it's the start. It's breeding confidence with all of us that, hey, we know exactly where this is going. And if there is anything loose, we get it cleaned. And then Friday's the fast Friday. We're rolling, man. And, I will I want to make sure we've covered our onside, our hands. We were doing some live looks and those during that fast time. Any cleanup on pump protection off of that. But I think the walkthroughs, the meetings between Fridays, Saturdays. I mean, you remember in the hotel, I want to create a little bit of stress with those guys. I want them to be in rhythm. Like all those little things matter. And I want to make sure, man, once they hit that fill from Friday to Saturday, they have that confidence to cut it loose. So that's a quick nutshell of a week, but there's no glam. I mean, I think people think there's some glamour to it. Man. It's you're 6 months straight of
It's
I don't
work,
know
baby.
78 hours a week. I mean, you're trying to be efficient. I think the best ones are efficient, man. I think the best ones can don't major in the minors. The best ones I've been around can be efficient. They can be efficient with their time. Because I do think if you're walking out of there late, man, the witching hour starts about 9 p.m. Yams. Not a lot of great decisions happen after there, right? And the games you lose usually lose is because of fundamentals and techniques. You know what I mean? Are you tackling well? Are you aligned well? And the magic call you think you made, come on, man. You're not on the field anymore. What can our guys do on 3rd and 5? And we want to make sure you're fundamentally sound. That's the biggest challenge.
That was a great breakdown. I love the fact that you guys touch on some of those critical situations on Monday. You're doing that as a full defensive staff on Monday, 10 minutes a pop, red
Quick, no, that's
zone.
a quick turnaround. It's
Yeah.
a lot on the QCs and GAs. Don't get it
Yeah.
out. And Chin's is unbelievable. Like Eric Shenander's awesome. Like he's an unbelievable coach. He's an unbelievable motivator. He does a great job calling a game. But it's something that we're at least getting ahead of the curve. It just never made sense to me for a
That's
long
so
time.
true. Like you're waiting till
Yeah,
Wednesday, and by
come
Wednesday,
on,
like
yeah,
coaches are trying to get out of there, already looking
yeah.
almost towards date night. You know what I mean? When I just remember some of those, why would we save the most important for the last day of the week? And it's
Good question.
usually, the way we had it structured at Oregon State, like Wednesday, unfortunately, was our red zone goal line, short yardage, and third down. No, sorry, third down we did Tuesday, but red zone, short yardage, goal line. But it's just like, those are critical parts of the game. And we have an hour of recruiting beforehand. So we're not getting in as a defensive staff till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And at that point, coaches are just, let's call what we call and let's get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we all talk about having, football intelligence and we talk about situational football and everyone wants to master that. But again, it was never perfect. There was a lot of work goes into it. But you're getting it on tape and you can say, hey, we understand a 3rd and 7 plus. We know we're going to get this dig concept off of it. What are the 2 things we want to do? Or, you've at least see it. You can work through some, and the players are somewhat familiar with it too, because you do have your DNA 3rd down calls, your short yardage calls, your red zone calls. I mean, so I thought it was great. And then we could go back and a lot of times you can change a decent amount, but you felt like you're ahead of it. And you got to get out of the office, man. And Spence has done an unbelievable job of that. You got to be fresh. You got to have energy like that. That's never made sense. I grew up the old school way. I promise you, I made coffee every morning. Used to GA. And when I was a GA at West Oregon, man, I had to go over to the dining hall. I had to pick up the bagels. I had to pick up the muffins. Then I had to go get the coolers down in the locker room, mix the orange juice and Gatorade, get that up there so the kids had something. Then I had to make sure the coffee was ready. So it was snow uphill both ways, all that good stuff. But what I realized is the amount of inefficiency of time, right? And so we
Oh,
have
you're
all these
telling me, man.
tools. Yeah, we have all these tools now. We can break down more film faster than anything. Let's be efficient. Let's get the information to it and let's get out. Because if you're grinding down as a coach, you're walking around like a zombie. Like we're telling our kids to take care of themselves. We're telling our kids to play at a high level. Are you producing at a high level? So I think it's one of the things that's trended different, but there's still a lot of guys that are just there to be there.
It's kind of funny that you say that, is because like I'm thinking back to, those first years that me and Jabril are graduate assistants, and we're over here just doing all our fucking scout cards on top Visio, just wasting our sweet old time because that's what we knew. And then Coach Danielson's like, why don't you draw them? Coach Kane, why don't you draw them? Coach Collins, why don't you hand draw them? And we did that for 2 years. I get to Oregon State. Okay, they draw it there. Took me 2-3 days to just figure out my flow. And I just cut off like 45 minutes to an hour and a half of my workflow just from hand drawing my cards. And I'm over
You
here
young
just kicking myself
Jedi's.
in. self in the frickin' the foot, like, man, what are we doing? Me and Jabril wasted so much time, and then we messed up. I remember one time it was a late Wednesday, late Thursday. I think we gave you the goal line cards and you checked them beforehand. And I think I drew like 13 defensive guys on top there, and you're like, yeah, I want to run that shit. That looks good. What's a what's a favorite drill or team period that you guys do right now that you wish you did sooner in your
Special
career?
teams drill called the alley drill. It's punt versus punt, which I actually sold from Coach Jay Cook said at Oregon State back in the day. And I love it because it's competitive. It puts everything in a transitional environment. It's about a 30-yard run. It puts a returner. I have respect, and the spec comes down and has to fit into it. So it's one of my overall favorite drills because you see all technique. You see guys in space. You see guys that will make good decisions, won't make good decisions. I think so many times, and I'm probably the biggest violator, but I want to have a clear progression. So all our special teams are broken up into those progressions and space. But man, that's a great drill where you add it all together. You see technique, you see space, you see guys have to make plays. And then we're getting 6 guys reps every one, and it's in enough space that you're not worried about guys twisting up and getting contact. That's one of my favorite ones that I like doing, right?
No, that's a good one. We continue to do that at Oregon State after Cook is left, and you just get to see people who have a feel for the game too. Just those full defenders getting a read on the returner sticking his foot in the ground and getting vertical, like it catches up on you fast now.
Question, like, no doubt. And then same thing with returner now, like who can make it. I love the part with, for me, the specs don't get that live look of all of a sudden have to make a play in space. So you got the long snapper running down, you got the punter running down, but also the returner. What are you going to do? How are you going to attack him? And you're going to step on his toes. You're going to work away. You're in a situation where you might block down the back. Are you going to retrace him and go block somebody? I mean, all those things that actually happen in football. So that's why that's been a really good drill for us. Plus, I can get a lot of guys through in a 7-8 minute period. And so I'm seeing younger guys. I'm seeing we can get matchups out there so we can talk some trash. We can see who really wants to go. And I always open my linebacker meeting by showing that drill and cuts of them on it. And that's been good.
Is there an overlooked or underappreciated situation in the sport of football? And if so, what do you think it is?
Your head coach should have to run punt team for a year before they can get a head coach card. Yeah, like I don't, I joke with the AFC. I was, for a long time. I just think until you've been on that side of it, you have no idea of the stress, the pressure that goes into it, how important it is. So I think that's the one. Just living that world, and again, that's near and dear to me because it is a world for a long time. But I think that's the one that's a little bit unique.
No, it's good stuff. Talking just a little bit about recruiting. I guess we'll go one. Let's go one kicker and then linebacker. What does the ideal kicker look like to you? What does the ideal linebacker look like to you?
Yeah, when you talk about a kicker, certainly kickers are a lot like baseball pitchers to me. You can either throw in the 90s or you can't. I can take you from 92 to 94, 95, but man, if you throw 85, it just ain't happening. So what you got to do is find out somebody who's got the actual leg speed and leg power. Then I think the most underrated part of kickers is you got to find. I want kickers that have played another sport at an elite level. So maybe it's soccer, maybe shoot. I've had guys that played hockey, baseball, but they've been in that realm where they have to be competitive. It's not just a kick and move situation right there. My best guys can all play. Mike Keenan could play slot receiver at Western Washington for us. Dominic Eberle when I was at Utah State was a world-class soccer. Jonah Dalmas is a great athlete when you're around Jonas, competitive as can be. So I can go down each of those guys. I've taken a lot of Australian guys from the punter standpoint. Most of those guys were Australian rules football footy players. So that to me is the side of it. And then the other side you got to find through is, hey, how are you going to handle a miss, man? Because you're not going to make them all. Like the mental side of that, it's not just you and me in a workout. So I got to see those guys live. I love seeing them in a competitive setting. If we can get them at our camp in front of a lot of people, I'm going to talk some trash to them. I'm going to have the head coach talk some trash to them. And then, how they missed, how do they respond? And I think that's probably so for me with a kicker, it's elite leg strength, but it's the consistency. And there's so much like golfers of how can you do the same thing over and over and over? And then when you do need to make a change, how quick can you make the change? There's some wind, there's, the ground, whatever that change needs to be made. Linebacker wise, man, especially today's day and age, to me, it's all about athleticism and space. Like several of the guys that I talked about, I'll backtrack a little bit. When you've been a small college coach, you learn to develop talent. That's one of the because you're never going to get ready-made guys. And so, you look at like Kirk Signetti and his time as a Division II head coach. That was some of the best training for me because you're not, Penn State was different. Like, hey, man, it was more of, hey, we know who the guys are. It's a matter of can you beat Ohio State? I mean, so on and so forth. Boy, growing up, at the Western Oregons, the South Dakota Mines, even the Utah States when we were there, because you're playing behind the eight ball a lot of the ways, is how can you find guys that are going to develop? What is that bigger picture? And you get clear. So for me, a lot of my high school my linebackers in high school, safeties, running backs, high school quarterbacks, because they're longer, they're athletic. Now it's my job to coach them to be able to get them into the box. Bone Phelps is a great example, high school safety. David Woodward was a great example, high school safety running back. Adam Baker talked about elite high school running back. And so those, I'm looking for speed and space. This game is played in space now. The days of when I was at Western Oregon, everybody was running ISO are long gone. I want athleticism. I want movement. I want twitch. And I want to see guys that are violent with their movements. The other thing I look for a lot more now is how do you tackle? How do you target? Because if you look at most missed tackles, and I know we do a study every year, if we are tackling above the waist, we miss 80% of the time. We target below the waist, we make it above 80% of the time. So I'm looking for guys that target that way on high school, junior college, transfer tape, because it's hard to change that if they don't. There's some things you can work. So that's another one that's came to me. And then we talked about it earlier, but it's all about the wiring, man. Like what makes this kid tick? And again, there's so many distractions right now. So many. Like I need to see them in person. It's so I've made very few mistakes when I've watched them practice at a camp and seen them in a game. You can see their demeanor. I make mistakes when it's tape only. Tape is certainly an indicator. And I don't want people to hear that the wrong way. Tape is an indicator, but man, when I see you in person, I see your body language. I see how you work with your teammates. I see how you handle coaching. Or if you're with me in a camp, I see how you respond when you don't finish through one and those type of things. So for me, perfect linebacker, 6'2", about 200 some change right now. Going to be 225, can run, physical, violent, and an elite teammate too, man. How's he going to be the alpha in the room? How's he going to bring people along?
That's great stuff. It's funny that you brought up the tackling stats because I got on with Adam Matheson, Coach Matheson.
WW, man, Western Washington.
Yeah, so I got him on
Yeah.
the podcast, and we were actually talking about you track and tackling and how you guys go about charting it, and what tackles you misses, open field tackles, left foot shoulder, right foot shoulder tackle, and we were kind of breaking down just how much detail you went into. Are you the tackling coach now? I remember Coach Kane was when I was there.
Coach TV Terrence Brown, who's been awesome, man. You talk about some dude with some juice yams.
Yeah. Oh, is that the gentleman that came from Cal?
Cal, yeah, he's awesome. He's done a great job, and Kane did an unbelievable job. And but no, I don't. With the special team stuff, I'm kind of removed from. I mean, we're teaching it. Don't get me wrong, but TB is the tackle guru, and he's done a hell of a job for us.
Yeah, you brought up. You want to see how players respond with some adversity. As a special teams guy, what does that communication look like? How do you go about gauging when to step in, when to give them their space? When a kicker shanks a ball, has a bad miss, or is facing a slump right now. What does that look like?
I think the first thing you got to do is you got to be the buffer first. I mean, each what I mean by that is each organization is going to be a little bit different. All right. To me, there should be about two dudes talking to the kicker. It's the head coach and the special teams coordinator. And sometimes, depending where you're at, you got to be the guy who stands in between the head coach and him also to help him out. So there's a lot of people with a lot of answers in that. I've really tried to streamline. I learned that early on, and 98% of the time when they miss, they know what they did wrong, and they can self-correct most of it, right? If they get in a huge funk, what I've done is we've sat down, we spend a ton of time doing it, but I'll get them on with their kicking coach every once in a while too, because usually if you can just get a couple keywords, and what happens, like I'm a terrible golfer, but the people that golf, you think about 72 things, right? I want to make sure we're thinking one or two things. I have them give me a phrase every time they go out. And the phrase is the phrase that they've given to me. Hey, whatever that phrase may be, up and through, they have one, but I want them just to focus on a couple small things as we're going and then use the resources. But you got to be able to build them back up, but you also got to hold them to a standard, right? Like we can't go out there and go 65% on field goals and think everybody's going to feel good about it. I talked to them very, very directly. This is the world I jumped in. It's the world you jumped in. And we have a lot less rope than anybody else. I get a linebacker in the misfits power. He going to get 67 other plays to do it. You're going to miss field goal, man. Everybody's going to see it. So you can't run from that. You got to hit that thing head on. It's no different from a special teams coordinator. You can do everything right. Next thing you know, you misfit something or on punt, kick cover, whatever it is, and it's not good. So we embrace that, but you got to also put them in those situations during practice. I think that doesn't happen a lot. Like, how many 1-rep shots do you have in practice, right? Like, hey, we're going to go out there and kick a field goal. And I think the other mistake, and I made it a lot more as a young coach, I missed a field goal, line it back up, let's do it again. No, man. We'll move on. Because this is going to happen in a game.
That's a
And
great point. I never thought about that. That's
yeah, I
great.
think it's such a natural, hey, let's just get him kick another one because everybody wants to walk out feeling good. We'll do it, we'll do it another time. But I got to find out how this kid's going to bounce back. And if we don't ever do that, we have a problem. Or we're going to do all our kicking the first 15, 20 minutes of practice. We're going to get it done. Well, I don't know. Last time I checked, games are 3 to 4 hours, and you might have to kick one early and might have to kick one late. So I want to make sure those practices imitate the game, because if I'm not putting them in the game situations, then we're just leaving it for chance when we go out there. So as much as we can, whether that's a nice field goal, whether that's what is our routine when somebody calls a timeout, like, okay, snapper, do you want to snap? I don't really care about the routine. I want to know what the routine is. Do you want me to talk to you? Do you not? Are you going to walk away? I said, are we going to get a couple practice snaps on the side? Tell me what we want to do, and let's work that. Let's have a plan to work that. So the first time it happens, not on national TV, we're trying to win a football game.
That's good stuff, man. I never thought about it like that. And because, when we did special teams, it was always, hey, you got 10 minutes to kick right after stretch or whenever it is, or maybe at the end of the practice. But I think that's a lot of value right there. If you miss a field goal, it's okay. We're moving on to something else. So that's good stuff right there. Talk to me a little bit about just your game day. Like, you're the coordinator and you're the linebackers coach. I feel like you can get pulled in a lot of different directions. How do you stay focused? How do you allocate your resources and allocate your energy? Like, what does that look like during a game?
Yeah, so that is the challenge, and I got to make sure I got great help from a special team standpoint. And I got great help from a linebacker standpoint, because I want to make sure I'm getting the information to the players that need to see it. The iPads have changed a lot of things too, right? Where you're able to get instant information back there, where in the past you were relying on somebody else to get that to you, and the players can see it. So for me, it's a very, very, I don't get too crazy on the side. I used to when I was younger. I was Jabril Frazier, man. I was rolling, and I respect that, and I love that. I promise you. But I got to get to the next play right now. So to me, it's always what's next, what's next, what's next. And so, how organized are we? We put the iPad for the special teams right on the 50-yard line, because my first year, man, we're running up down the sidelines. I'm trying to find everybody like, this ain't working. So we'll put it right on the 50. We're going to come there, and it is a quick synopsis. I take a quick look at it with our QC. He usually says, hey, Stace, I see this. I'm going to take a quick look at it. Let's get it to our players, and we're moving on to the next. Because anytime you're on special teams, there's a transition offense, defense, right? Second part is I use, Chins is now down on the ground, so he'll take a quick look. And even when he was up in the box on, hey, we need to watch play 12, we need to watch play, whatever it is, these are the things. And then I'll get directly with the linebackers after the special teams plays. But it happens fast. And at the same point, you got to make sure you're cognizant of what is going on, because you might have to have one team up. You're checking wind direction, you're checking depth, pumping, whatever those things are going. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to it. So for me, it's a lot of, I've gotten real calm on game days, because I'm trying to get to the next play. And I also don't want, I want to, Spence always uses the analogy that we're like a corner man for our guys on game day. And I think that's a great analogy, and he does a great job of that. My job's not to get them too crazy. Usually it's trying to calm them down, get them right, and make sure, hey, man, this is what's happened. We got away with this time, but it's coming. And make sure we get that adjusted and we're moving fast. But it's like anything now. Like, we got more QCs, GAs running around. I got to use them, and I got to use them effectively. And fortunately, we have some good ones.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what your game day is like, because I remember just being as a QC up in the box, just trying to count 11 on punt. Like, you're clenched up now, and you gotta do it for every special teams phase, and then, like you said, you got to do it for the linebackers. So that's got to be a little stressful on game days.
Your heart rate's going, man. You got to be careful where someone watches. They'll tell you you're going to have a heart attack right there. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you guys still drinking Three Monsters during the special, or during the defensive meetings?
Back down a little bit. Like I said, these seasons have gotten long, right? So you got to make sure you're taking care of yourself too. I think that's the hardest thing to where it's at. I mean, the way May and June have been for a while, I felt that certainly we're at Penn State, but I think I was in Boise 4 days in May. You just that time's changed. So how you take care of yourself so you can give your best to your family, to the players, like that's a real challenge. And like I said, those you start, these camps seem like they start earlier and earlier every year. Ideally, you're playing in the college football playoffs, which is going in past New Year. So it's a lot of ball.
What are some red flags for you in the recruiting process?
Right now, so many of the red flags have popped up with who's involved with the players. It's not even the players, it's who's involved, because where it's changed is if there's issues now, there's probably going to be issues a year or two later. So that's probably the biggest red flag. Like if there's concerns that are outside of football, you know what I mean? Outside of football and development, I think you really got to take a hard look at it, because those concerns aren't going to go away. Where 10 years ago, hey, maybe the best thing was for this kid to get away from his parents, or, now you're talking to agents and some other thing. And again, agents got a role. I got an agent, there's roles in all those. But if those issues are happening a lot now, they're not going to go away. You gotta understand, hey, is the juice worth the squeeze on those? So he's a really good player. I really like him. It's not necessarily the players deal, but we're going to deal with this every year. And is that worth it? Especially in a place like Boise State, because and I think everybody would probably say that every place has got their own niche. But if we're dealing with that there, that it's just not going to work for us. So let's cut bait now. There's enough great players out there that we need to find the ones that fit us.
What does that conversation look like? When you're with the recruit and you're deciding like, yeah, great player, but not a great cultural fit. Like, what does that conversation look like where you're not just crushing the kid, crushing the family? Yeah.
Know
How
that,
do you go back navigating that?
Yeah, sure. Transparency is the best for me. I mean, like, I want to try to tell, I'm going to be real upfront with, like, this is a concern to me. Like, every time that we talk about these things being important, and the next thing I hear is this is important. And so what you're telling me and what's happened is not the same. Like where are we at, guys? Let's have a real conversation right now. And if Boise State's not for you, that's cool, man. I'll pat you on the back and wish you the best wherever you go. I truly mean, I would rather know now than a year from now, than 2 years from now, that these were the issues. That's not fair to you. That's not fair to us. And so I just think what happens, and this in recruiting yams, but recruiting is the most misunderstood part of this game. Everybody thinks they understand recruiting. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody thinks they understand it, right? There's a platform now where everybody can talk about it, and that's fine too. But to me, it's one of the most misunderstood pieces of all of college football. This guy, he had so, and he committed here. No, not really. You know what I mean? Behind the scenes, this is what really was going on. And hey, this is what happened here. This is how it goes down. There's so many, and I don't know it's anybody's fault. There's so many parents, agents, that think they understand. They're playing a game that it just doesn't make sense to me. Like that's the problem I see, is just the misinformation, the misunderstanding of what it is. And hey, man, like, no different than us. What we're looking for in a player, I think the players need to look for that too. What's truly important to them, make a list of priorities, and find the place that fits you the best. Because if you find that place, it usually works. If you're kind of always floating and listen to a lot of people and finding people that have the best interest for the kid or not. And shoot, that may be more money somewhere else. That doesn't make you a bad person. I don't. Those are part of the games now. It's just a matter of making sure, I think, you have an understanding of what you want to do, and I'm not wasting your time, and you're not wasting our time too.
Yeah. Being removed from that scene is like, you see it a lot more. And the ones that really irk me is like, hey, Fresno State or Boise State got to commit, or Oregon State got to commit. And, he chose X school over offers from, Michigan, Ohio State. It's just like, come on, guys. They probably offered them early, but, it wasn't a take for them. It's not like they beat out these schools from a recruiting process standpoint. That's my favorite one that I see on top of social media. When it comes to
Penn State, though, I mean, it was just like this time of year, like, it is real for some places. You know what I mean? Like, they get and so I've seen guys lose jobs over it, where behind the scenes it wasn't even the story. So, anyways, that's my talk on that. But yeah,
from a recruiting standpoint, I sent out a message a while back saying, hey, if you could ask college coaches anything, what were some of the questions you would have for these college coaches? These are coming from high school coaches. And one of the coaches brought up, he asked, do college coaches, do they listen to high school recommendations, high school head coach recommendations, or do you think that, sometimes they're being biased and have a hard time being objective because it's their player?
I think that's part of knowing your area and knowing who you're talking to. And I think that's probably the same in any business. Yeah, I definitely listen to high school coaches. Those guys are around them way more than me. Like they know, you know what I mean? Now, every high school coach is a little bit different. There's some I'm gonna listen to a little bit more because I've taken their guys and they've been exactly what they said they were. There's some I'm gonna listen to a little bit less because I've taken their guys and it wasn't what I thought it was. And I'll walk back in there a year later and like, yeah, I kind of thought that for them. Bro, a year ago, you didn't tell me any of that, you know? So I think knowing your area and creating relationships with those coaches is perfect. Yeah, absolutely going to listen to high school coaches. And what was really good for me was getting out, you know, I know the Northwest well, I know SoCal well, because I had that area for a long time. So when then was getting out on the East Coast and, you know, get yourself in North Jersey, get myself out in Cleveland. But recruiting's recruiting. And when you can recruit those relationships and get to know them, it was great for me. Got me out of my comfort zone. I got a chance to get around some other people, and it was so yeah, 100% listen to coaches.
Another one of those questions was, you know, with everything that's going on right now within the recruiting world, you know, what advice would you give to high school coaches that they could share with their players or share with their parents in reference to the recruiting process?
Putting your priorities, what's truly important first. So, you know, if I'm talking, you know, whoever the decision makers are, right? That's, I think, number one, define who are the decision makers, right? Who are you truly going to listen to in this process? Because I do, like I said earlier, I think that's where things get convoluted a little bit. And then what is the priority? What, as a player, what are the 2 or 3 things that you truly want that you're looking for? And that's hard for 17-year-old kids, 18-year-old kids. I mean, it's the first real decision in their life. I understand that. So and don't just give the, you know, the normal answer. Oh, I'm looking for this. What's truly important to you, man? Like, where do you want to be? And then, you know, you've got to be able to navigate. Hey, this is what's important to me. And quite frankly, this is the place I have opportunities too, right? Like, I want to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones has never called me. So, you know, until that happens, you know, so understand that too of, hey, this is what I'm looking for. These are my options, right? And at this time, man, like it's no different than you interviewing for a job, right? Like if Boise Spence calls you tomorrow and says, hey, I want you to come on a visit Friday, and you you know, I might wait a couple of weeks. I'm going to go, you know, talk to them. Well, bro, it ain't going to last very long. So I think there's sometimes a disconnect with some of those things. I won't, you know, but I would tell guys, be very, very clear on what's important to you. You know, and then make sure whoever you're using in the decision-making process, that you have a clear, you know, like clear picture of them also, which is not easy to say for a kid, man. So I get the challenge.
Yeah. You know, from a scouting perspective, and we'll just talk defense here. You know, what is the most pertinent information that you're giving your guys? You know, what do the cut-ups look like?
Give them answers to the test. I tell my guys all the time, this is not biology. You go cheat down there in lower campus in biology, your ass is getting kicked out of school. Okay. We're going to give you the answers to the test. It's my job to give them as many answers to the test that I can to make them play fast. So I'm a big keep it simple, but give them the pertinent information. Are we getting any tells? Formational tells, O-line, you know, stance tells, running back tells, formations, alignments. Like, what are the hardcore things that I can walk into that linebacker room and say, okay, these are the things that you need to know. On 3rd and 5, this is the DNA of what these guys are doing. That's what players want. They want something that gives them advantage. But I think if you're, you know what, they're about 62% here, and you know what I mean, you're wasting your time. And again, there's only so much working memory. They only, you know, and they're getting bombarded everywhere else. So I think that is the genius in coaching. How do I make the complex simple? How do I give my guys the little things they need to have the answers to the test that we can do? So formations tells those things without putting it over the top, and then making sure, hey, when we do pull the trigger, we're pulling the trigger fast.
That's good stuff. Talk to me a little bit about just kind of basic rundown, meeting structure for, let's just go day one install, what that looks like. How do you structure your meeting?
But for me, we're going to get in right away. I think it's important as an assistant coach. It's also my job to make sure I reverberate the message that comes from the head coach. So whatever message we've walked out of that team meeting with, I'm going to hit again right away. Like that is the most important. And even if it's not talked about that day, that's got to be talked about every day in the room. So that's really, really important to me. That's my job in that role to start with that. But for us then again, I'm going to hit each learning point for all my guys. So that meeting, and again, I think the really good ones are going to find ways to be creative in that meeting, ways to keep guys on edge. I want my kids not worried, but ready to know that I'm going to call on everybody in that room. We're not just sitting there going through it. We're going to stand up. We're going to walk through. We're going to go onto the playground. We're going to be in an interactive cut. We're going to hear it. We're gonna see it. So to me, it's all about how do I hit their learning styles each way with whatever that install is. And as I've looked through that install, I also think you got to be a little bit careful of not, like I said earlier, not majoring in the minors. Let's not worry about quads too much. Let's not worry about flops. This is the nuts and bolts of what we're trying to get done, and understand every defense has a strength and weakness. So whatever that install is, I want my guys to understand, why are we playing a single high defense here? What is the strengths? What is the weakness? This is a split, we're playing some split safety looks. Why? What is the strengths? What is the weakness? So they're understanding why. What are we trying to gain from this? And understand, hey, if they throw this route in this situation, that's on us as a staff. Now, that's okay. We're going to tackle that thing for 7 yards, and we're going to put the next down. But I think those things are important when you're working through your base and stuff.
Yeah, one of the things that I deeply admire about you, respect the hell out of you for, is, and maybe this is not the right word of it, but you stay in your own lane in the sense that, you provide the head coach with all the information, right? You have a belief on which direction we should go. He says opposite of something you believe in, and you say, okay, that's the direction that we're going in. Like, where did that come from? Like, when did that click with you? When did you learn that lesson? Like, okay, I'm the special teams guy. I can provide the information. If the head coach wants to go in another direction, that's the way we're going. But then you go out to the special teams meeting and you sell it like it was your own idea.
I learned that early on as a GA, man. It was like, whatever's said in that room, let's get it out. You know what I mean? But once we walk out of that room, that's the best effing decision that's ever been made. Because nothing will break apart an organization faster than that. If, I don't know, man, I wanted to play this coverage, but Yams, he wants to play this, like the locker room always knows, man. Like, you've got to be unified and you've got to walk. And if not, you're not going to make it as an organization. And the longer and older I've done this, I've gotten doing this, that's probably more important than anything, because they're already hearing from everybody, their family, and that, well, we should have done this, should have done that. It's just, all the things that happen, and that's normal. You got to make sure we're down. If we're not as strong as that decision, boy, that's going to be a problem for any organization.
I feel like in this conversation, I'm leaving a lot of meat on the bone. But is there any final advice when it comes to coaching, teaching, leadership that you want to share for the good of the community?
I think I don't know if there's any magic advice. I think how your process is, it has to be consistent. And what players respect is consistency. And you got to be consistent within your own self. And I think those are a lot of words to say, hey, I'm doing the same thing every day, and I'm doing it to make sure that I'm doing it within my personality that gives my players the best opportunity to be successful.
Good stuff, Coach. Well, shoot, I appreciate your time, man.
Thank you, brother, man. I'm glad the family's doing good, and get your ass back out to Boise and visit sometime, man.
We might be heading out there this summer. I'll shoot you a text. I'm actually playing with the men's, or not the men's, but the women's head beach coach. So Alex, him and I are playing Seaside together.
Let's go. Get Tubes up there to sponsor that thing. Let's go.
Oh, that's right. I got to hit Tubes. Anyways, Coach, I'll turn this episode around on Friday. I'll shoot you a text here on the side, if there's a picture that you want for the episode cover. But thank you for everything. Thank you for your time. I know it's tough to tie you guys down, especially when you guys are off. I mean, this is probably the last thing you want to do is hop on for an hour and talk more football.
Anytime.
All right, Coach. Well, I appreciate you, man.
All right. Thanks, Yams. Good seeing you, man.
Tell the fam I said hi.
You do the same.
All right. See ya.